All right, to kick things off, to do a little bit of introductions, we obviously have Richard Monk on the call. Many of you guys that have joined previous webinars have met Richard. And also, if you guys are customers as well, you most likely have met him. He is our data success manager here at Dataedo. So he runs all of our customers' trainings, onboardings, implementations, and continued success. If you guys have joined webinars previously as well, you're most likely used to having Chase in this spot. He is out today, so I'm filling in for him. I'm Patrick Hines. I'm an account executive here at Dataedo. So I help lead our new business efforts and then also help with seamless implementation with Richard. Many of you guys are quite familiar with Dataedo, but for those who are not, we are a lightweight data catalog. We're really focused towards flexibility, customization, and ease of implementation. To kick things off, some of the key functionalities that we do offer is going to be data quality, lineage, classifications, and then today's topic, which is going to be domains. So I'll pass that over to Richard and we'll get things started.
All right. Thanks, Pat. Thanks for that introduction. Today, we are going to be talking about domains. As Pat mentioned, this is Dataedo Basics number 2. The focus of this is really about enabling your catalog users, the people who are not editors, enabling them to have the very best experience they can with the data catalog and to get the information they need in one place. So the way it's implemented in Dataedo, we go for these 4 basic topics that I've listed here. A business-friendly approach in that we want users who may not be familiar with the data systems to still be able to find the information that they need. So we have decoupled the need for knowledge about systems from getting knowledge about the systems. We provide a better way for people to get in there, quickly find what they need. The increased understanding, we want to provide that information in levels so that they can gradually dig in as far as they need to get the amount of knowledge or understanding they need to do their jobs. We want to make it easy for people to get to the information that's pertinent to their job. We don't want people getting lost in the huge amount of information that's available in these data catalogs. We want to guide users, especially the business users, to the information that is pertinent to their job, so they don't get misled or confused by so much other information. Guide them directly where they need to go. And finally, we want catalog users to become data citizens. We want data literacy to increase and allow these catalog users to interact with the data catalog content and with the subject matter experts. This interactivity there is really important so that people are engaged and they see the value of working with the catalog, but also interacting and providing feedback to subject matter experts and editors. So just like we mentioned a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about business glossaries, terminology is important. And that's where we're going to start this session today, is with terminology. And by that, what is a domain? How do we at Dataedo define the word domain? So if we go, a step higher and look at information in general, if you talk to data management people about domains, they are going to be thinking about attributes and management of data, the databases, the systems, the standards, rules, formatting, all of those types of things that define and help with data management. That is not what we're talking about today. If you talk to metadata management people, they are going to be very similar to the data management, but instead of focusing about the data, obviously, they're focused on the metadata, talking about rules, characteristics, standards, organization, all of that stuff with the metadata itself. So we're getting closer to our definition. If we talk to information management people, they want to focus on creating boundaries or categories of information and then associating that with the assets and the knowledge, the glossary terms, whatever that pertains to that area of knowledge, domains. So they are focused on knowledge. So the Dataedo approach is kind of a hybrid between the last two, where we use the information management idea of creating knowledge areas, domains, and linking assets or objects that need to be understood with that, with those knowledge areas, and then associating also the metadata so that everyone can get even deeper knowledge about the concepts that are being defined. So you may have heard other terms that seem similar to this concept of domains. I'm not going to read all of these here. There are lots of them. Just be aware that in Dataedo, we do have this definition that we're working with. And that definition is that domains are logical containers that provide easy access to the data catalog, so users are guided to the information that's relevant to their job, and the other parts of the data catalog that are not relevant are basically hidden from them. They don't need to search through a lot of information to find what they're looking for. Ease of access and guided access are the keys here. So in the pictures, we see these examples where we've gone into business domains and we have these business domains presented to users, and they can very easily identify what they are looking for. And after they choose to click on something, then over here on the right, we see, information about that business domain, and we can start to drill in to get more specific about what information we're looking for. And the information is presented about the assets and the knowledge, the information that's available at each of these levels. So let's take a little tour of the domain structure here, and then we'll talk about the actual content later. In Dataedo, we have two types of domains. Those are the business domains and the data domains. They're very similar, but they have different objectives, and that has to do with audience, basically. We're going to talk specifically about these in detail, but this slide is presented here so that when you download it, you will have a slide that compares these side by side, and you can easily see how similar they are and how different they are. So talking about business domains, they are focused toward business users, obviously, and it's about providing information to business users so that they can do their jobs as consumers of data. Think about business domains as those who consume the data. Within the business domain, you can have subject areas. They can be nested 3 levels deep. So in the example over here, we see the finance business domain, and within that, we have 3 top-level subject areas, and then some nested subject areas in that. They can be nested 3 levels. The domains themselves are only top level. They are domains. There's no such thing as a subdomain. We have domains and then subject areas. And for the business, that's for the business domains. For data domains, we have data areas inside of the data domains. The next step here is really for those who are creating these domains and the structure here. So the most common way that people create business domains is by department within your organization. It's a very natural way for people to think about accessing information. They think about what department they're in. There are other options here. So the way you decide what option you want to follow is by asking the question, what structure will make it easy for business users to find information pertinent to their job? That's really the key. You want to make it easy for them to find information. So if it's by department, then that's a natural natural way to organize that. If it's some other way, that's fine. It can be organized in other ways. Again, this example, the finance department, and then within that, the accounting team, the asset management team, the financial planning team. Within the accounting team, we have these different business processes that exist. So it's very easy for a person to go in and find what they're looking for, even if they don't understand anything about the underlying data structures. For data domains, it's very similar, but here we are obviously focused on the technical users. So those people who have responsibility for providing data, and that's the organization we've indicated down here. The common organization is by ownership, stewardship, assigned responsibility, those ideas of working with the data and providing it to the consumers. So we have a different need here, but the approach is done the same way. We create these logical data structures and link objects to them. Just like with business domains, the data domains and data areas are organized in the same way. We have the top level data domains, and then the data areas that may be nested 3 levels deep within those. It's the exact same organization. And again, if that idea of organizing by ownership doesn't seem natural, then there are other ways to think about that. Just ask the question, which domain structure will make it easy for users to find the information they need to do their job? And one thing that I've noticed as I've thought about how to approach creating these domains, with business domains, typically we start at the top level and we gradually subdivide to the lower levels. I mentioned the department, then the teams, and then the business processes. In data domains and data areas, it makes sense to start at the bottom and group them as you work your way up. So you might start with some data products and then group them in logical groupings as you work up until you get to the top level of a data domain. So a little bit different approach as you actually create these, but the idea is the same. The underlying idea, make it easy for people to find what they're looking for. As far as what users see when they come into Dataedo and they start utilizing domains to access information, I mentioned guiding people to the right place. So this example here, a person comes in and they immediately recognize that they may be a member of the marketing and sales department. They naturally click on that. And then they have these choices and they see that they are a member of the sales team. They naturally click on that. They're drawn to it because it's their job. They resonate with that. And once they get in here, they are presented with this list of objects or assets that have been linked to that subject area. You can see here, we have 22 terms that are linked to the sales subject area. We have a whole bunch of tables that are linked. This overview slide shows the important assets and with some information about those to help with selection. The next tab here, the Assets tab, we see more detail about these things. So here we are looking at the tables, and we have a list of all those tables. We have information about what database they're in, descriptions of those, pretty high-level information that allows these non-technical users perhaps to start to find what they're looking for. And they have the ability to click on any of these to go even deeper to get more information about these. So they can go as far as they want to get the level of information they need. The next tab here is the Diagram tab. This presents to us a relationship diagram of all of the objects or tables in this case, right there, all of the tables that are linked to this subject area. Now, you may notice there are some clusters here, and that's on purpose because we have linked objects from different databases. Obviously, we're not going to have cross database relationships, join relationships. So that's why they cluster. But the important thing here is that the diagram generates this on the fly every time an object or a subject area is loaded. So every time this is generated dynamically. To get a more static, uniform view of this that persists over time, the editors can go to desktop and create an entity relationship diagram there. Notice that this one is much simpler. It's the same subject area, but here I created this concentrating on only one database and selected tables within that. So it gives the editors an ability to present the important aspects of what they want to show. They can modify that, create it, modify it, whatever, in desktop and save it, and then it will always be presented the same way here in Portal. An important thing to note for editors is that subject areas and data areas are the only place in Dataedo where you can create ERDs. So if you need an ERD, you need to have a subject area or data area to go with it. So that's an important thing to remember. Next, briefly, we have this lineage associated with the subject area. This takes all of the objects that have been linked to the subject area and shows all of the lineage associated with that. This ends up, as you can see, showing a very complicated view, probably more information than what you actually need. Personally, I would go and look at specific objects and look at the lineage for specific objects rather than trying to get any meaningful information from this view. But it's there for an overview so you can see how data actually flows from each database on over to reporting. The schema changes tab allows everybody to understand what's happening to the data sources over time. So in this example, we see that the customer's view had something added to it on September 1st. And if we want to know what that was added, we can click the details right there, and it will present to us that summary of what actually happened. An important thing to remember about schema changes is that the date is not the date the change happened, it's the date the change was found or seen by Dataedo. So there could be a slight difference there, but conceptually, we're tracking changes over time and we can see what's happened with these objects that are linked to this subject area over time. Permissions. This is a tab that's visible only to administrators in Portal, and it allows the administrators to know which users have access to this subject area and what roles they have within that. So it's an administrative view so people can understand who has access and what they can do. Now, speaking of permissions, this was one of the important items that we listed way at the first, was this access of getting people to what they need and nothing else. So the way this works is we apply permissions at the level of the domain or the subject area. In this example here, I signed in as a data steward. And because I'm a data steward or an editor, that gives me permission to see everything in the catalog. So of course, I can see all of the domains. Here, I signed in as a community member, and so my visibility is limited to just that domain that is pertinent to my job. We limit that. Now, a little while ago, I showed a couple of examples where I said, the person comes in, they recognize that, for example, marketing and sales is their department, and they naturally click on that as if it's a choice. You can set it up this way, so it's not even a choice. They are guided directly to the domain and the areas that are pertinent to their job. As far as they're concerned, nothing else matters, nothing else exists. They're sent and focused directly to where they need to be to get that information very quickly, very easily. So that's the reason for applying these permissions here. Now, how do permissions work? This is set up by an administrator in Dataedo portal. The administrator will create the appropriate group. So here we have a marketing and sales community members group, which means that members of this group have the scope. They can see the marketing and sales business domain and all of the objects that are linked to it. Remember, this is the logical representation where things are just linked to provide this access. So they have the scope, they can see the marketing and sales domain and things linked to it, and they have data community member permissions, the role, they have permissions for those objects that they can see here. So we have what they can see and what they can do. Now, when a new member joins, the administrator will assign them to the correct group. So in this case, John is assigned to the marketing and sales community members group, which means he has access to that domain and all its linked objects at the level of a community member, which is exactly what I did here. This is John's account, so he sees only that, and it guides him directly to where he needs to be. Now, regarding the permissions, they can do whatever is appropriate for that level. You could have multiple groups here at different access levels. Regarding the community member specifically, that gives these users the ability to interact with the catalog. They're not editors. They can't write descriptions or create linkages or any of that editing type stuff, but they can interact at a community level. They access this ability to leave comments right here with this comments icon, community icon, and it allows them to leave comments. So for example, John left a comment for Barbara, said, please update the description of this table. And so he is engaged. His own knowledge and his own experience is becoming part of the catalog here. He's asking for more information, which Barbara then received that note. She added the description and she commented back to John that the work was done. And he becomes engaged, he becomes part of the process. And the content is better because he pointed out the gap there. And so this ability for people to be part of the data community as data citizens is really important. There are other ways that the community members can interact. They can leave these ratings here in the form of stars, 1 to 5 stars for the different objects that they're looking at. They can choose to follow by clicking the notification bell here, and then under the icon, they can get a list of changes that have happened to this object over time, things that were notified. And they're also presented with this when they enter Dataedo. They see these notifications that pertain to objects they're following. Again, this idea of having them engaged with the catalog is really important, both in terms of creating the catalog and using it, but also keeping people engaged over time and having all of these users feel like they have power. They're part of the process and their perspectives and their input is valued. It's really important to having a successful project here. So back to the beginning, this idea of the 4 goals that we have for domains here to assist with the catalog users. The business-friendly approach where they don't need to know anything about the underlying systems. We guide them and we present them with the information they need because we have those logical containers that are meaningful to them rather than forcing them to learn about the underlying structures so that they can find information. The logical approach with linked assets is really the key to that. Increasing understanding. They can go as deep as they want. As soon as they find the information they need, they stop. But it allows them to go as deep as they want and get information that is standardized. We talked about glossaries and dictionaries last time. And this is what I mean by that. They get the amount of information they need that is pertinent to them and is standard over time. So it's really easy for them to do self-service knowledge investigation there. This easy access to information again, the permissions where we guide people directly to what is pertinent to their job and limit their access to everything else. That could be, because they're not supposed to have access, or simply because it's easy to not have them bogged down in a whole bunch of other information. So it's a dual purpose there. We protect the data and give it to people who appropriately need it, and we make it easy for them to find what they need. And finally, that community interaction, letting people interact with each other and be part of the process, rather than just presenting a static product and saying, this is what it is. And if you have a problem with that, maybe you can find a person to talk to, and maybe you can get your perspective added there. This makes it very easy for people to interact with each other and with the catalog. All right, that's everything I wanted to talk about. We're going to go to Q&A now. I do see a question or two here in the chat, so we're going to start there. So yeah, Pat, if you want to be the moderator for questions, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So first question here is going to be from Sven. He was asking if there's an Active Directory integration when you were speaking about permissions, and then also on the piece of groups.
Yes. So you can set it up so that your Active Directory groups correspond with your groups here in the Dataedo portal. They need to be set up. You still need to create them in Portal. So you would create this, but then you would basically create a link between that and your Active Directory group. So when people join, this is automatic. That is possible.
The next question was coming from Curtin. It says, in light of what you say, would you say it's a good practice to represent the subject areas or data domains in the data warehouse table name?
I'm not sure 100% what you're saying there. Something that is kind of useful to know here is that the domains, the subject areas, the data areas, they don't have to correspond directly with anything that's created physically. It can. So for example, you might have a data area or a data domain that is the data warehouse. Basically, you're creating a logical layer on top of the physical layer that is the same thing, but it's conceptually different. And that way, if you ever need to change and limit some of those things there, for example, if there's something in the warehouse that is sensitive and you don't want it out there for some of your user groups, you can do that. So there may be an association between those, but there doesn't have to be an association between those. As far as naming, there's links everywhere that are going to point you to the right place. So if you're at the warehouse, there will be a link that says this is part of that data domain, for example. So there's links everywhere. I wouldn't see a need to actually put that information into the name of that. I did see another question here from Corinton. Will we have access to the repo? Unfortunately, no. This is my personal repo that I use here for these trainings. But all of the examples that exist here, in the deck, obviously you'll have the deck, you'll have those examples. Is the data lineage completely auto-generated? Almost. Let's say we create as much automatic lineage as possible. That the underlying message there is there are a million ways for data to move. There are a million ways for lineage to be created. There are a million ways -1. Let's say it that way, for the lineage to break. And so we will create as much lineage as we possibly can. When you are at that point and you're not seeing something with lineage being created automatically, absolutely contact us back and we'll go over that with you to find out whether it's a technical issue or a design issue on your side. There's examples. For example, we've had instances where lineage was not created because of extensive use of parameters in the stored procedures. In that case, it is because of your design, but we went ahead and changed the connector, enhanced it to address that situation. So we will respond to those questions. But I won't lie, there's always going to be something that you have to do manually. We just want that manual part to be absolutely as small as possible.
Another question, Clinton, as well. So in Dataedo, on the general aspect of features uses to describe line of business and tunnel users through the right assets.
Yeah, basically the domains are going to allow people to recognize who they are and where they need to go. If you have this permissioning set up, it will guide them directly to that location. If not, then they need to use that recognition. I am in the finance department, so I'm going to click on the finance domain, and it, as you say, tunnels them in. Once they get there, all of those pertinent assets are linked, and they have access to those, so they can get that information at whatever level they need, whether it's strictly at a high level of descriptive information or going in and seeing, metadata attributes and other things.
We have another one coming in here. Are there more videos, documentation / examples about areas inside data domains?
Yes. Let me find that video right here. It'll take me just a second. I think it's this one. Let me drop that in the chat. This is a Dataedo talks that we did. I don't remember exactly when. It's been a while back. That basically talks about these other ways to conceptualize your domains and areas. As I say, these are not the only ways. There are lots of other examples. One that I particularly like for editors. This is for your editor team. That would be to create a domain that's called something like editing, development, something like that, and then create a data area for each person or each editor on your team, link those assets that they are responsible for defining to it. They can very easily find what they're responsible for. And when it's done, you delete that subject area or data area. All of the work they did is kept because that applies to the objects. Remember, the subject area and data areas are simply logical. So it groups them in. They can quickly find what they're responsible for, do their work, delete it, and move on. It's a really nice operational use there. Obviously, you wouldn't expose that to your end users, but for your development team, it's a nice way to tackle that problem of different people being responsible for different parts of the data dictionary.
Perfect. I think we're all caught up on questions now. I know we do have a few more minutes. If there's any other questions, feel free to put those in the chat for us, and we can have Richard go through and answer for you.
Yeah, we have some time here. I'll also move over here so that, if you want, you can make note of these contact addresses. If you need to contact any of us here, obviously new customers, talk to Patrick there. I'm here for training and, knowledge transfer about anything about how to use Dataedo. Licensing, this is for the existing subscribers. Jonathan will be your contact. And then, of course, support and general questions can go to the appropriate email addresses there. Yeah, so just another minute here. There's a question right there.
Yep. When linking tables to domains, do you like from data or the actual data connection? Doesn't matter.
So when you're linking the tables to the domains, remember Dataedo pulls in the metadata about those tables from your connection. That is what is linked. So you're not linking to data, you're linking to the metadata and documentation about those assets. One thing that does matter is if you have a domain, let's see if I can find an example here. Here's an example. Right here, notice for this sales subject area, I have linked tables within these data sources, within these connections. If I were to link that entire object, if I linked to the data warehouse, it would allow me to see the documentation for the warehouse, but nothing inside of it. That is not inherited. So you do need to link any specific object that you want accessible to your end users there. That can be confusing. Just remember, any object that you want the documentation available needs to be linked up there.
Perfect. We do have another one here. On the data governance perspective, is it a good practice to have the same data tables attached to many data domains?
It won't hurt you at all. The example, in a previous talk, I think it was the understanding domains feature overview video. The example I happened to use was finance. I showed a finance business domain, and then I showed a finance data domain. And the implication was they need to be equivalent. They don't need to be equivalent. Use whatever organization works, and then link your objects wherever they need to go. So, tables and terms and glossary items about finance would link to every place they're there. And it doesn't matter. It's all about access. The underlying objects are where the documentation exists. So it's very scalable. That information, if someone changes a description on a table, that will be visible through that logical layer to whoever has access to it. So that logical layer is what really gives the power to this entire system. I'm also available for any sort of help. If you want to meet and talk about features or training or project planning, adoption, any of these challenging things, frankly, I'm available to help with that if you want to schedule a meeting with me. All right. Unless there's another urgent question that somebody's going to drop in right now, I think we've done it. Thank you all for your participation today. I think this has been some good interactions. So thank you, and watch for that email with the link to the recording here in the next few minutes.
Perfect, guys. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Bye, everybody.